Ma nishtana this Pesach from last year's Pesach. Last year on Pesach, we were totally besimcha, totally filled with joy. But this year on Pesach, halayla hazeh, we are not only filled with joy, we are also filled with fear. The truth is that this emotional paradox of being filled with joy and fear at the same time is not something new. It is something that many Jews have felt on many Pesachs throughout Jewish history. And it is something that our ancestors felt on the very first Pesach in history. On the seventh day of Pesach, we read the biblical account of Shiras Hayam, the song that the Jewish people sang after crossing the Yam Suf. And as we examine the words of that very song, we notice something quite fascinating. Vayar Yisrael es hayad hagedola asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. Israel saw the great hand that Hashem afflicted upon the Egyptians. The Jewish people witnessed the tremendous power of Hashem. They saw the 10 Makos. They saw all of the Egyptian firstborns drop dead. They saw the awesome might with which Hashem led them out of Egypt. They saw their enemies helplessly drown in the sea as they crossed unscathed to the other side. The Jewish people were able to piece together all of the events from the moment they arrived in Egypt to the moment that the sea split for them and came crashing down on the Egyptians. And in response to it all, Vayiru ha'am es Hashem. The people feared Hashem. They were struck with trembling. They had an overwhelming sense of pachad, of fear. Then suddenly, everything changed. In the very next pasuk, the Torah tells us, Az Yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael. Then Moshe and the Jewish people sang out in song. What is song? Song is the greatest expression of simcha, of joy. Song is calling out to Hashem with a tremendous amount of happiness and joyfulness. One moment, the Jewish people are filled with fear. And the very next moment, the Jewish people are filled with joy. The very same emotional paradox that we are feeling 3,300 years later. What is the solution to this emotional paradox? Where do we turn when we have these conflicting emotions bottled up inside of us? The answer seems to lie in the very words that bridge these two verses. Vaya'aminu b'Hashem. The people had faith in Hashem. The bridge between fear and joy is faith in Hashem. Rav Simcha Zissel of Kelm, who died in 1898, explains this idea through his analysis of the words in Tehillim, in Perek Beis, V'gilu birada, and rejoice in trembling. He explains the connection between rejoicing and trembling, between fear and joy, by way of an analogy. He says, to sit in the presence of a very revered man is a great burden. It is like being in a prison where one has no freedom to turn. The conversation must follow the will of the revered man, and all with apprehension. One would not wish to abide unremittingly among elders and sages, but whoever is accustomed to seek the improvement of his soul will rejoice in the yoke, says Rav Simcha Zissel of Kelm, for thus he will acquire the habit of wise living. Hence, it says that fear will become intense joy. When we observe a man who accepts the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, although the yoke rests upon his neck, he experiences the truest of all joys. Vayaminu b'Hashem. The people had faith in Hashem. When one has faith in Hashem, any trembling that one has instantly becomes intense joy. When one has faith in Hashem, one realizes that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We hope and pray for the time that this current fear is removed from our midst, but until then, we continue to be joyous knowing that the same being who brought this temporary fear will soon bring an everlasting joy with the coming of Mashiach speedily and in our days. Have a wonderful Yom Tov.